for these benefits. And what I'm hearing is that there could be a huge consideration of penalties if these individuals that maybe didn't address their situations properly and applied for certain benefits, up to and including 225% of what you're receiving. So, for instance, if you're receiving the $2,000 a month or every 4 weeks for this the emergency fund benefit, you could be paying back $4,500 by if you didn't qualify for it. So make sure that you ask the right questions, make sure that you qualify, and make sure that your case, even if it's a unique one, that you address it with either your local MPs or your accountants and make sure that they get that information out to you. So I'm going to start off with originally the personal side of the questions, because the personal side is more important to everybody. Then I'm going to move on to the business benefits that are available. The personal benefits, and like Haraj mentioned, if there's a question that's on your mind and you want to stop me, I'll take it right on the spot. What I could do also is put a pause right where the personal questions end and personal benefits end, and let you ask me those questions, and then move on to the business side. And some people may not care about that for the time being, and they might say, you know, I've heard what I need to. So I'm going to start off with the personal benefits. So there are different benefits. Provincial has very minimal benefits. The one big one that most people probably have already applied for is a $200 if you're, if your child is in daycare or a private school and you're having to pay a certain amount. The government's allowing you to take register the provincial government on the website. They're giving you $200 for that, and realistically, it's not much, but it's one-time payment. And if you have a child with a disability, it's a $250. The other provincial benefits, there's one that they're giving away now for certain masks and things like that. If you need it, if you're on certain types of assistance. Again, it's not a big amount. We're more ready to talk about the federal benefits and what the conditions of those benefits may be. So the big one that obviously everybody is asking about is first and foremost, the tax filing deadline has been extended to right now June 1st. Previously for regular individuals was April 30th. So there will be no penalties if somebody ends up filing the tax returns a bit late. At this point, there will be no consideration for penalties, but there will be an allotment also to pay your tax bill, if you do have one, by August 31st and not be charged any additional interest. That doesn't mean if you had to make installment payments as a self-employed individual, they won't charge you that for the past year, but going forward, you're not going to be charged that amount of any installments for this year from March onwards to at least June, and any potential let's say interest that you would be charged on the current filing up to the August 31st mark. So that's a very good news. I expect that if this thing goes on a little bit longer, that potentially CRA may turn around and further look down the road for their deadline to be extended. As it stands right now, June 1st is the deadline. So the biggest benefit right now, and everybody's confused about what did we apply for? Did I apply for basically the EI benefits, or did I apply for the CERB benefits? Well, initially, everybody was lost, including myself, when the government was telling you apply for these benefits, either EI or CERB, depending on where you've made more money. But the problem was that on the 11th hour, they decided to say, hey, these are going to be the same thing for everybody. So whoever has applied for EI and was told they're going to receive X number of dollars per every week or every 2 weeks is now on the CERB program. The difference is that when you're on EI, you have to report every 2 weeks what your income is. And when you're on CERB, you have to go to the CRA My Account website, individual account website. And over there, basically put your information on a monthly basis, that from this period to this period, I had no income. And the conditions are all listed there. What are those conditions? For EI, we all know if you were working in the past, let's say so many months, and you accumulated enough hours, that's you got your record of employment from your employer, and you applied for that, and you went through the drilling of the questionnaires for whether or not you qualified. For the CERB, it's very simple. There's a list of questionnaires requirements, and if you actually qualify with those requirements, then you just say, yes, I qualify, and the government mails you a check within 10 days, or if you have direct deposit set up, you will get it automatically within 3 days, which has been confirmed, and everybody's receiving that. So very, very easy task, but the problem is that some people that I've been hearing, even from certain clients, they don't qualify for the benefit, they applied for it, and what's the problem there is that the penalties could be huge. So what do I suggest to them is to contact the government right away and tell them that they made a mistake, and to send the money back. For instance, somebody that was not employed prior to the whole COVID situation cannot just now apply for the CERB benefits and receive $2,000 a month, or if you were just a pensioner receiving pension income, you would not qualify for the CERB benefits of $2,000 a month because you're already receiving pension benefits. But if you were a pensioner and also working, and you had to stop work as a result of what happened, you would still qualify for the CERB benefits because your situation changed as a result of what's happened with the virus. So there's an easy list there. There have been some changes to that list made, and I'll go over those, but mainly you're required to have at least made $5,000 in 2019, or going back from March of this year when you stopped working, going back a full year, you had made at least $5,000. Whether that's self-employment income, employment income, or if you were on maternity leave and receiving EI benefits, that's also another one. So that is basically the main consideration, that you did work, and you didn't choose to stop working. Basically, the virus chose for you to stop working. Basically, nobody is now going to turn around and either give you a job as a self-employed person. Maybe you were in construction doing some paint jobs and doing some other repair work. Nobody wants anybody in their house because outside of the social distancing requirements, you don't want that coming into your house right now, and you don't want to have something like that going on. So you're not going to hire somebody to come in and do any work for you right now. So that's going to be a big reason why, as a self-employed person, you are not working currently. If you were an employee and you were told to stay at home and work from home, you're still earning an income, therefore you don't qualify. So you wouldn't be applying for the CRB benefits if you're still working. The main difference that with Trudeau that mentioned yesterday when he increased these benefits and said, we now would have certain people qualifying that we didn't qualify for before. For instance, if you had an individual that basically is earning gross salary, not net, gross of $1,000 for the month, we will still qualify that person to receive the CRB benefits. Now, there's a little bit of a loophole in here because for the first period of CERB benefits, you could potentially only needed to not work for the last 2 weeks. So from about March 28, 29 to April 11th. And in that period, if you did work and you only received less than $1,000 gross, you technically would now go back and qualify for that period. You may not qualify for the second period because you would have 2 periodic payments in the next reporting period from March, April 12th to May, whatever. But the thing is that you would qualify for it for that one period in the first ever CRB period, because they're only looking at the 14 days as opposed to the full month there. So there's something that you may want to talk to your accountant about. Maybe you had some income but not enough, and you may qualify for that one assistance for the first time. The process is very simple. They are telling you, based on your month of birth, for the first 3 months, they were asking you to file on the first day of this week. Next 3 months were for the second day. the next 3 months were for the third day, and the 3 months in the end from October to December, the deadline is essentially today for you to file. That doesn't mean that you can't backwards apply. They're telling us to use these dates so that the CRA website doesn't automatically crash, because there's hundreds of thousands of people that are applying for these benefits right now. So there were people that applied for this benefit in a previous period, and basically there was no issue, because the government does not restrict you to file on that date. They just requested that you do so that the website doesn't crash all of a sudden. So this is a very good benefit. I know that for a lot of people, $2,000 is not a lot, but I also say, there's quite a few countries out there that are not receiving any financial support from their government, and this is something that unfortunately, yes, $2,000 a month doesn't cover rent, but at least, if you have some sort of agreement with your landlord too, maybe to address your concerns of how much the rent payments would be, it is potentially some form of benefit. Now, on the other side, for the low-income individuals, the government's also addressed the GST benefits to be almost 2 or 3 times what they've made in a previous quarter, by giving them an additional benefit. Just I believe it was on the 8th or the 9th of April. Some couples were getting upwards of $580 as one lump sum payment to address certain needs, obviously. But not everybody qualifies for this benefit. It's based on your previous year, the 2018 filing, and whether or not your income was, in a position that you qualified for GST benefits. Some also may qualify for very minimal benefits, and then there's some that would be qualifying for the maximum. Certain families with 3 kids are getting upwards of $1,000, somewhere around there. So every family situation is different. So the more dependents you have, the more the government's giving you. Also addressing with the GSTs, the Canada Child Benefit, the government has also started increasing that, at least for the last month, or for this month, in potentially an extra $3 to $550 on average per family. Again, they're not giving you details, but they are saying the families that qualified for this benefit will be the ones that are going to receive it. So if somebody never qualified for a Canada Child Benefit because their income's above the $150,000 mark annually, they're not going to get it. Or if they received a small component, they're not now going to receive an extra $300 to $550 in their bank account. Again, it's for the ones that need it, and that's where they're looking at. So those are some potential benefits. The government has also addressed with the banks to continue this whole conversation process to talk with their, the people that are holding mortgages, and addressing the 6-month deferral program. Now, the deferral program doesn't mean I don't pay any interest for the next 6 months. The interest is going to be compounded on your current mortgage, and potentially you will pay a little bit more than what the interest would have been had you paid now. So if you have the ability to pay your mortgage currently, and it's not going to put you in a financial strain, my suggestion is for you to still continue and making those payments towards your mortgage, because you are going to make more towards your payments in the future because of the compounding effect. So the government's trying to work with the lenders, and I know the banks are the ones that make considerably a significant amount of revenue. I believe there was a report that came out somewhere around 46 or 64 billion in revenues last year. So they don't really need it, but they're business at the end of the day, so they are going to charge you that interest. That also goes for any other loans and any other credit cards. Even have lowered their interest rates, at least so from what I'm hearing. Certain credit card companies from 20 to 10%. If you have to do a deferral on your financing for your vehicle, they're also taking that into consideration. Again, it's not a blanket deferral. They will ask questions. They will have to see whether or not you are without a job currently. So that there's a concern there that some people would be taking advantage of it. So I think that those are the main issues. Now, I do know that there's also the for the CERB that the government also is considering people that have stopped receiving EI upwards of going back to December if they have not been receiving any benefits, and they may not have been going back to work as a result. So there are, again, increasing those benefits. And the 1,000 income, they have already addressed it on your CRA online portal. The only difference is that the way that they've worded it, it sounds like you actually cannot work at all and receive $1,000, which doesn't make sense. Somebody would have to work to earn that $1,000. So don't take that. Go to the main CRA website, canada.ca. Search about the CRB benefits there, and they will address that you can work, but only receive an income. Gross income of $1,000 before taxes. So that kind of puts the personal tax benefits section to a halt. I can pause here, and if somebody has specific questions that they want to ask, I can get Haraj to take those and read them out, and then I can move on to the business side.
Right. That's quite informative. Thank you. All right, one question. So one person is saying, I'm a little confused about when to apply for each month. Since the first of the month, mid-March to mid-April, had an application period of early April. When do we apply for the rest of the months?
Okay, so the second period, it's already been rolled out. And you applied for it this week. The reason why the first period took so long was because they had to start this from scratch. They actually had to build it into the website. They had to decide what the benefits were going to be. Truthfully, the period is actually at the beginning of the period. You're applying for it before you actually know whether or not you're going to earn an income. So if you've stopped completely and you know that you're not going to earn $1,000, you go ahead and apply for it from that period because you don't have a job to go to. If you think that you might earn an income and it's going to be more than 1,000, you may wait and apply for it, because right now you can apply the back date for the first period. When the period is coming up at the beginning of that period, if you actually go to the CRA portal, your portal, you're going to see what are the periods. They're going to list those periods. And for the start of those periods, the first 4 days, they want people to apply so that, they get them the money ASAP. So the confusion was mainly because of the first period, because they rolled out the program, as early as they could, but it was almost near the end of it.
All right. Another question from Talin. With respect to the CERB program, if you have rental income, does that disqualify you?
So rental income is not considered as employment or business income. Therefore, it is not considered as part of the calculation. To be quite honest, rental income, you probably have the interest, the property taxes, the maintenances, and every other cost that may come up with owning a rental property. And who knows if your tenant may not end up, being able to pay rent for the next couple of months. CRA has not taken the approach of including rental income in your income calculation for CRB. That's why they specifically mention employment and self-employment income.
All right, we have another question. Oh, too many questions coming in one moment. Where did it go? All right, what is there for full-time students who are working part-time and have earned 500 plus in the prior year?
So the government said that they were going to address the student situation, especially because most of the students start working in the summertime. Unfortunately, up to this point, they haven't done so. If your income was less than $5,000 from March going back, or for the 2019 period, they are not going to consider you to have qualified yet. But they are going to address the student situation, and they said that they would potentially include them in the 2,000. I have a feeling that they're going to give them a reduced benefit program, because I don't think that a student that was not earning $5,000 would qualify under their program, because they wouldn't have the income support from previous years. But Until now, the only thing that we've heard up to this point is just from the premier, from our prime minister, that they will be helping us at some point, and I believe that they will do something about it.
Right. We have, I think it was the last question on this part. For CRB, oh, another question came in. For CRB, do you qualify if you ask your employer to stay home if your company is an essential business and still operating, but you don't want to risk being at work since you live with an elderly?
So now there are requirements. Thank you for that question. There are certain requirements if you're having to take care of an elder that might be sick as a result of this virus, or if you have kids at home. But choosing not to work just because the scenario with your employer is not the best case for you. Maybe you don't want to potentially deal with customers or clients and be exposing yourself to the virus. That's not something that the government is giving as a break for everybody. Unfortunately, it has to be that your employer says, we don't need you, and they have to put you, they have to put you out of a job, or that you would have a scenario like your kids would be home from school and you have to take care of them. I've had similar situations where certain clients, their husband's home and they are actually working, and the old school mentality, the husband can't take care of the kids as well as I can, so I'm going to have to stay home. Well, that is really sort of gray right now. As I told them, actually call the CRB and talk to them about it, because I don't think you would qualify if you already have a family member that's already staying home and taking care of the kids. So unfortunately, your question, that there won't be a qualification as it stands right now if you choose to stay home.
All right. This is another question. All right. Can a person who is a Canadian resident, but her daughter has sponsored her, be eligible for this benefit if she has been for Canada for the last 5 years?
Okay, I'm going to have to go through this question. Can the person who is a Canadian resident, but her daughter has sponsored her, be eligible for the benefit? She has been in Canada for 5 years. I'm not really understanding the question. Maybe you can address it a little bit better. Is the person who's a Canadian resident applying for it, or her daughter is applying for the loan? So if the person, even if you're if you're considering yourself a resident of Canada, the government is giving you those benefits regardless of you being a citizen of the country. If you have been living here and working and paying taxes here for the last so many years, you're qualified for these CRB benefits. But if you came here on a visit and you are unfortunately stuck here as a result of that, unfortunately there are some people in that situation, you wouldn't qualify for it. I hope that addresses the question. If not, please.
Yeah, it looks like it was addressed. Okay. All right. We have 2 more questions. One person is saying, if someone had OSAP this year and last year, and they were working, can they apply for the CRB?
You mean they received grants from the government for OSAP? If that's the case, that's not an issue. I mean, the OSAP grants have nothing to do with it, but they're not considered employment or self-employment income. So if the OSAP funding was the only funding that they received, and that's what they're using as income, then they wouldn't qualify. The qualification is specific. It has to be employment or self-employment income.
All right, I think we have one last question here. If someone has been laid off because of COVID-19, would that individual apply for both EI and the monthly emergency fund of $2,000?
No. You apply for the one benefit. You apply, generally, if you had employment income, you would apply for the EI through the EI portal, and you would now be converted into the CERB. And that was the confusion in the beginning, is which way do I apply? Well, in the end, the government decided we're going to give CERB benefits to everybody. So if you apply through both and you're receiving both benefits, at some point the government's going to find out, and they're going to ask for you to pay and potentially get charged some penalties along the way. Now, there are some people that have received additional benefits currently. So people that were on the EI portal, and they all of a sudden they received $2,000, and they had received 500 and 500 and 500 potentially before from their EI program, now are probably going to be asked to pay that amount back, and potentially for the next to have it deducted against it. So one or the other, that's basically what we're looking at. But the EI portal right now, if you're on EI and you're on EI because of the COVID, you are getting the CERB benefits. If you're on EI from a previous period, I have not seen the government convert those individuals to the CERB benefits because they were essentially on the EI program previous to this virus, and their situation, they believe, shouldn't change. So some people are receiving $200 a month from their EI program because their income was minimal, but that is not going to be converted into CERB. That's as far as I know, that's going to be the case.
All right. There's one more question that came in, Grant, while you were explaining that. If a student earned over $5,000 last year, do they qualify for the CERB?
So the $5,000 is not the only requirement they need to have. They need to have, at the very minimum, the loss of a job in these current few months or this month as a result of the virus. So whether they were working those 2 months and it was minimal income, but they were working and now are told to stop because they cannot receive the CERB, or they can't work and receive any income. Now they would be qualified for the CERB benefits. But as far as a student who received $5,000 last year in the summer and didn't work the rest of the months and now is going to work in the summer and can't, that's something that the Trudeau government said that they would address, but they have not addressed it as of yet. But I believe that they will come back with some sort of funding for these students that are going to be out of a job in the summer market.
All right. I think that was the last question. Let me double check. Okay. And that was about it. If you want to continue the next part.
So the next part is mostly about the business benefits that the government has addressed. And again, these businesses don't necessarily have to be a corporation. You could be a sole proprietorship and apply for these benefits. And as long as you meet the minimum definition of what's required, you will have no issue. So the first one I would address is just, again, the filing deadlines have been extended. If you have HST payments, they're still requiring you to make the remittances, but they're not requiring you the remittances as in filing them, but not having to pay them until this situation is cleared. So again, they're going deferring the payments for those periods up to end of June 30th. So if you had to make installment payments or payments for your quarterly remittances or annual remittances, they're saying don't make them. We can address these later. Until the June 30th period. However, if you had to make installment payments previously and you have not, they would likely be charging you that interest for the last year because it's not a blanket, don't worry about it. Or if you had existing loans because you were delinquent in paying your previous HST remittances prior to it. Like if you had a November year end, your due date was end of February, that's outside of the window, so then you're still getting charged interest potentially, because it's on new filings from that March period. So that's the easy part. The filing deadline's also been sort of addressed and extended for the corporations. If you have a March requirement, you can now file till June. So there's even for like trust accounts for estate returns have been extended, for non-resident filings of NR4s for rental properties have been extended. So there's quite a few things that have been extended. I'm not going to go over all of them at what their deadlines are, but CRA website's got all those details. The first big hurdle I'm going to address is the 40,000 Canada Emergency Business Account, which is the CEBA. That one was already set up from the beginning to, and they rolled out the program sometime last week, and people have already started applying for it. They say that it's going to take at least a minimum of 5 business days before the government pays you this amount. I figure it's going to take a little bit longer. They have to address if you did have the proper qualifications. The easy step for this is that you go through your bank that you're with, so your business account, and you log in. And most of these banks now have set up a certain, sort of a plug-in somewhere that says apply for the CEBA. You may qualify for this, and even some of them are right on the front page. I know my Scotia account, right on the front page, it said apply for the CEBA 40,000 loan. So what's the loan about? First and foremost, the $40,000 loan, as long as it's paid before the end of December 31st, 2022, there will be a forgiveness on the $10,000. So essentially, it's free $10,000 in your pocket from the government, and there is no interest for those for that period. So almost up to 3 years, there's no interest. If you continue to keep that loan, you will be asked to pay the full 40,000 back, and the interest rate is going to be around 5%, and it'll be on a sort of fixed payment schedule. So that's something that would be addressed. I have a feeling that most people that qualify for it will take it and pay it back, and receive that 10,000. Even if I can take a line of credit personally to pay that back, at least I keep the $10,000 and not pay it to the government. I would do that. Now, the minimum requirement previously was that you had to have a payroll of at least $50,000 for employees in the previous year in 2019. I have now gotten the confirmation from the Premier's address today that that amount is now lowered to $20,000. So more businesses are going to qualify for that $20,000 loan. And realistically, I think that makes more sense, because there's a lot of businesses out there that are paying rent and have overhead costs that wouldn't qualify. Now, I am still, working with different, individuals, and I'm also urging, my fellow business partners out there to address with their MPs or their MPPs, their local ones, that if they have companies that they've paid dividends for, or if they have ongoing administrative charges, because there's a lot of individuals that pay themselves as a dividend rather than a salary, and I have many clients that have done that, and they do not qualify for this loan. So if you don't ask these your local MPs or MPPs to address this situation, unfortunately, it's going to get stuck, and you're not going to qualify for any benefits. And there are quite a few people out there that have rent to pay for their commercial properties, for their businesses, and they don't qualify for those types of breaks right now. Now, the Premier also did mention today that they will be addressing those commercial rents, but they have not really given any further information about that they're just trying to work and see what's going to happen. Fortunately enough, I think that it's a big problem that they will be addressing. I don't think that what up to this point, they've been pretty transparent about who will qualify for these and what they're going to give, and there have been certain changes as time goes on. But I think that if they did tell you that if you do have these massive rents to pay for on a monthly basis and you have no revenue, they will address those. So that should be coming in the next week or so. I think they're just trying to see where they can get money from to give it out. So it's a big additional benefit for these businesses if they can qualify, because the $40,000 for a business that the minimum is $20,000, but they're having if you have 20 to a million in payroll, you qualify. But a person that has $1 million in payroll, with the $40,000 is not going to be enough. That's barely going to help them, go month to month. So there are businesses that are still active. They may not qualify for the certain benefits that I'm going to talk about, but surely if you have a payroll of at least $20,000, you are going to qualify for this benefit. So again, keep into consideration, these are changing. So as the information comes out, I am posting it on my Facebook fan page. Any new information that is coming out that is valid and not just rhetoric and hearsay, but just so you know, you should be listening as much as you can to what's going on with the government, not just for the overall health situation, but the tax breaks or the funding that the government is giving out. So you may not have qualified previously, you may qualify for certain things now. So that's the first one. That's the biggest measure for as far as a loan goes. Now, there are other companies or other programs for the loans that the government is having available through other channels, like the BDC, for instance. They have given additional loans through them. These are not interest-free loans, but they are loans available for people that may not have qualified previously, but may qualify for now because of the whole situation. The government is pushing these institutions to give these loans out because certain businesses will need more than that $40,000 to survive in the next few months. So talk with your accountant, if these loans make sense for you. But at the very minimum, from what I'm hearing, the interest rate's around 5%, which is not bad. But I'm not sure if it's going to be a variable or fixed. If it's a fixed, it's pretty good, probably because you're not going to have that change in a while. But variable loans, as the interest rates go up, it's going to be obviously more expensive as you go along. So that's covering the $40,000 benefit. Now, there are also two types of wage subsidies that the government has brought upon. The first one was right away the 10% subsidy. It's almost a nothing subsidy, but it's a benefit nonetheless. You are qualified regardless of any situation, up to 10% of your income for that period to be reduced from your payroll remittance. So let's say I have an income of $1,200 and my federal and provincial tax for that period is only $170. I have CPP and EI there. I cannot deduct that amount against the CPP and EI, but let's say the 10% of my salary is $1,200, I'm going to reduce the 170 by the 120 and give only $50 for the federal and provincial taxes. Those are going to be considered as income for me in the future when I file my corporate taxes. But it's a great benefit to have, because at the end of the day, even if you have not been impacted by this virus, the government is allowing you to have that benefit. Now, the maximum amount is going to be $1,375 per employee and up to $25,000 altogether. So what does that mean? Really, the system is simple. When I'm making my payroll remittance for the period for my business, I'm not remitting that portion, the 10% for the period. So really, if I had to pay them $300 and my federal and provincial taxes were at least the 120, I'm only going to pay them $180 instead of $300 from that $1,200. So it's a very good benefit, regardless of your income or anything else. You qualify for it. So why not take that into consideration and have at least a $1,375 lower payroll remittance for the whole year, assuming that it goes on long enough that you may qualify for the whole amount. The next one, which is a better benefit with requirements, is that the 75% wage subsidy. So in order for somebody to provide or receive a 75% wage subsidy, regardless of if you pay yourself or if you pay somebody else, like somebody that's not related to the corporation, there is that 75% subsidy. Now, there is a cap. The maximum is on $58,700 of income, which means there is a limit of $847 that the government will reimburse you on that person's payroll, which is 75% of the $58,700 for that week. It is on a weekly basis, so they will be rolling that program out. They have not done so yet, but in order to qualify for this, you need to make sure you have a CRA business account online, and you're going to apply that with that account, whether it's by yourself or your accountant. That's between you and them, but you need to have an online profile. So if you haven't created one before the program rolls out, make sure that you qualify, have the CRA online business account. Now, what are the other requirements? Well, the biggest one obviously initially was you needed to show that you had a 30% reduction in salary year to year from March to March. Now they addressed that might be a certain problem, because really the whole scenario may not have right away reduced your income, but maybe reduced it a smaller amount for the first month and then maybe larger in the next couple of months. So they did change that and said, we're going to take your January and February averages, and we're going to address the 15% reduction in those instead of a 30% reduction as they initially said. But for the next upcoming periods, the 2 upcoming periods that they're going to be paying, because it's right now they've set it up as a 12-week period, it would be to the 30%, because realistically, if your business didn't get impacted the second month and the third month, you're going to get that 30% reduction, or some people right away it's 0. Because if you look at the periods as well, it's not March 1st to March 31st. They're looking at it from March 15th to a month later. So it is going to be a little bit of a problem for certain people to address the reporting requirements, because they're going to have to show for this benefit that they did actually have a reduction. It's not going to be, I'm giving you this loan or this wage subsidy regardless. You have to actually prove that your revenues are down. So you need to actually have up-to-date preparation of your income and your expenses, or reporting of your maybe income statement. Again, the detail is still getting filtered, so we're giving as much information as we get. But as far as I know, there's going to be at least a reporting of the incomes from period to period to show what it is. So if your accountant had been filing your tax returns on a monthly basis where it showed, let's say, just put the full income at the end of the month or at the beginning of the month, that's going to be a problem. You're going to probably have to go back and restate it for that period to show from this period to this period, this is what my income was previously, and this is what it is now. So probably a little bit of work that's going to be done by certain businesses, but at the end of the day, the government is qualifying you for an $847 a week subsidy towards your employees. So I guess you're going to have to do a little bit of work for that. The benefit is obviously it could be it could take a little bit longer to get paid for this, but hopefully with the $40,000 loans that they've been rolling out, at least the loan process application has been rolled out. I'm hoping that holds a certain amount of people over for the time frame that they need to get by, so that they can apply for that wage subsidy and have the government reimburse them for those payments. Now, the whole idea behind this process was for you to keep your employee working instead of sending them home. Initially, the talk was that you had to pay their 25% component where they were addressing the 75%. Then they decided that it's not required, and that's why you have certain employees right now that are really on a not in a good place, because their employers have come up to them and said, we're going to pay you 75% of your salary because that's what the government is reimbursing us. So you have to work and do the same job essentially and get paid 75%. Now I tell those people, do I say something right now? I probably don't, because the downside for that is if you do, let's say, quit as a result, you may not qualify for the CRB benefits because you're quitting. If your employer says, okay, I'll let you go, that's not an issue. Well, now you're going to have $2,000 a month, as opposed to if you were getting paid, let's say, $60,000, close to $2,000 a month or $4,000 a month. So there's a significant difference there, and I know it's probably a lot lower than what a lot of people were making currently. It's probably better that you work right now and maybe address the situation later, because businesses are hurting too. I mean, at the end of the day, some businesses probably will go bankrupt because of the situation and not be able to continue because they were really in a bad spot to begin with. And with this situation, it's probably put them over the top. So my suggestion is that, if you're getting the 75% from your employer, just keep quiet, work it, and hopefully they reward you after the fact. And certain bonuses maybe for the upcoming years may be a little bit higher because this situation was addressed by you agreeing with what's going on. I don't think it's legally allowed. I just don't know. I'm not a lawyer. At the end of the day, if the lawyer tells you they're not required, well, they're going to say it's either you take it or we put you up, because there's no other way that we can pay you. So again, whether you address it with a lawyer and or keep your mouth shut, I think that you're better off just working and taking what you are. So that program is going to be rolled out hopefully sooner than later, but that is the biggest government benefit that everybody is probably, all these businesses are going to get, especially the ones with a lot of employees, because if you have 1 or 2 employees, it's not a big deal. You can also pay yourself that amount and get reimbursed by the government. But if you're a related party to the company, yourself, your family members that are working for your company, you can't all of a sudden, that if you were earning $20,000, put your salary up to $60,000. They're looking at pre-COVID salary amounts and going based on that. Now, if an employee is going to be given a raise as a result of the situation, they are okay with that, because if the employee is not a related party, they don't have an arm's length relationship with the company, then there's no problem. You can increase their wage and they get paid whatever, and the government matches the 75%. Now, I'm guessing if certain people start going crazy and increasing it for a short period of time, there's going to be certain penalties given for that, just because they want to give their employees a little bit more now, but I'm sure they have to continue with the same salary going forward. So you have to be careful with that, obviously, and address these problems as they come up. But really great program. $847 is a great deal of funding that you can get each of your employees on a weekly basis. So I think I'll leave it to that. Again, the wage requirements they're going to look at comparing March to April 15th, March 15th to April 11th, and then April 12th to May 9th. And the last period that they have is May 10th to June 6th, comparing the wages and the percentages currently. So obviously they're behind, and it's going to be a little bit confusing for certain businesses to apply, because the April 11th is already passed and they haven't rolled out these subsidies yet. But as long as you're paying your employees, you will get your money back from the government. I think with that, I can probably say we've covered everything that we need to from the business end. There are other small benefits here and there that the government has, like the EI program, that if you're having an employee that works 4 days and they're off 1 day, that's the employee sharing program. They've always had this. Certain companies have always used it as they've had certain work shortages. So an employee works 4 days and then the EI pays that 1 day. So there are those programs that are still available. And if somebody's already used this program, there's a 30-day waiting period. They're also taking that off the table. But if you haven't used it, I believe there is a 30-day waiting period. So if this is going to be a long period, some employers may take that into consideration and help these individuals out that way. But again, there are going to be additional benefits coming out, like the Premier said. I believe the rent issue will be addressed, and as more problems come up, they're going to have to look at how they can help these businesses stay afloat. So I'll let Haraj now take the floor and see if there's any questions for us to address.
So actually there is there was one question in regards to the 847.
Okay.
Let me scroll up to it. It's the 847 per week by the government. Has that been proven? Has it been proven? So I'm assuming he's asking, is it confirmed that they're rolling out this money?
No, it has been confirmed that they are going to. That is a definite guarantee. If you look at the 75% wage subsidy on the Canada.ca website, that's there. So it's not like it's not going to happen. The problem is it's a massive undertaking like the CERB on the CRA portal to set something like that up. And what are the requirements and how are people going to report this? I guess they're still trying to get around the whole process, and that's why it's taken a little bit longer than it should to have these employees get paid or the employers get reimbursed for those employee payments. So definitely not something that is fake news or what have you. It's just taking some time for the government to set that program up.
Right. We have another question as well, but this one is related to it's a CRB question.
Okay.
If clients pay off older invoices for work prior to March, so it looks like the business received income even though you hadn't been working, will that be seen as income because it has fallen during a wrong time, or the income only counts for the actual payouts?
Yeah. So that's an easy question. So we in Canada and in the rest of the world, accounting is based on the matching principle, matching invoices and income in the periods that are earned. So this income was earned in a previous period. The payment just happened to be after the fact. There's a lot of businesses that have, shipped the product and delivered it, but they have a 30 or 60 pay period where they get paid for it, or you have an invoice for your, as a subcontractor. Those payments are made after the fact. So there's no issue there. Those aren't considered to be income in the period that you receive the payments rather than in the period that you invoice it. But, take into consideration that some people are going to try to circumvent the CRB benefits and backdate invoices. So I don't know how CRE will be monitoring these types of situations, because somebody could easily backtrack an invoice that they may have made in the start of the year as opposed to March, and maybe they got paid recently. So you just have to be careful with what's going on there. But if it's a legitimate payment that came in and there's a consistency pattern with this individual that you've invoiced, that they pay you like a month or so later, you have no problem. So that is not considered income. For employees, it's based on when they receive their employment income rather than when they actually work, because there's certain periods where somebody works and they receive a period a week or so later. Well, that's considered to be basically income for the period they received the funding. Okay, so got to be careful with that.
Right. I think those were the questions for the business part so far.
I see another question there about if a shareholder is making a salary, do they qualify for CERB? If you're making a salary and you are essentially paying yourself to get that 75% wage subsidy, you will not also qualify for the CERB benefits. You have to receive no income in the period for you to receive those CERB benefits. But if the shareholder was making a salary and now is not making an income as a result, and as a shareholder of the company, your own business, you wouldn't have been paying EI, you qualify under the CERB benefits, just like how a self-employed person would qualify for those benefits. So again, it goes back to you would not qualify for both CERB and the 75% wage subsidy. It's one or the other.
Yeah, I'm good with questions here, unless you've got some private messages towards you, Grant.
No, I just saw it there actually in the message. I don't know. Oh yeah, there that was a private message. I didn't know that. So realistically, I'm going to see if there's any other private messages.
in case somebody sent something private.
Yeah, so there was the question about the 5,000 last year that they qualify for the CRB as a student. I addressed that. I don't see any other private questions. I'll open up the floor to, again, general questions that you might have regarding any of these opportunities that the government has addressed, or if you do have any sort of situations that are coming out. Now, there are many things that are out there, like even for students that have their student loans, they're addressing those as you don't have to pay them currently because the government is forgiving the interest component on those loans for the time being. Since it is a government loan, they don't have a problem, obviously. So these are things that would be no issues, but the bank loans, obviously, right now they haven't addressed in any way. I have a feeling that you're going to have some situations come up where they will maybe even reduce the interest because it's significant for 6 months not to pay any mortgage payments. The interest and the principal amounts the interest amount will just compound it to be a lot more than you would have had to pay it in the 6 months to begin with. And are they going to, reduce the amortization period by those 6 months, or they're just going to extend it for the 6 months? So those are things that the banks are addressing as they go. I think the government funding has been very strong currently. We're hoping that we have a situation where it does address certain individuals that, for whether it's personal or business rent. But I have a feeling that, I have a company that is a property management company, and, they spoke to a lot of their landlords about this whole situation. And a lot of the landlords turned around and said, based on their current situations, they were able to take the last month rent for the upcoming months if there was the potential that an individual was out of work and couldn't pay. Obviously, they would have to go through the same profile and show that they have not been earning any income as a result, and they would take their last month's rent towards the next month. Some property owners landlords were even okay with the idea of getting a reduced rent as long as obviously the person was out of work. So I think that the most important thing is that we have to address the human side, the human element of it. I am a property owner. If my tenant came to me and said, I'm not able to make a payment, I would make some sort of arrangements. But at their bare minimum, so as long as they're able to help address some of that cost, I think I would be okay. Sorry. For some reason, I got unmuted. So as long as I'm able to address these, individuals as a human being, and I'm able to help them, obviously, that's the main concern. I think Canadians in general have a very good rapport with their paying their rents on time. And for the most part, I don't think that we'll have too much of an issue. I think most people already have some savings, and they're going to utilize those savings currently that they have to make sure that their rents are paid on time. I know there was this whole kerbuckle about a group of individuals saying don't pay your rent when the April 1st deadline starts. I don't think that most people would address that kind of situation as legitimate. Everybody has to work. Everybody has to do whatever they can to make these payments go through. As long as they don't have their big chunks like their other loans, maybe vehicle loans that can be extended. I think the 2,000 benefit could tide a lot of people over for a few months, and we're just hoping that the COVID situation gets better, and everybody does their part and does the social distancing to make sure that we don't have to take this situation longer than we have to. Yes, there is concern south of the border and what's happening there and how that's going to be addressed, but what we're doing here, I think, from what the medical side is saying, that basically by the third week or the end of this month, we will start seeing the curve going downwards instead of up. And I'm happy if that happens, and we can, maybe by mid summer to the end of summer, we can be out of this situation. More so for the elderly and our parents than for us, really, because as we can see, the numbers are way up towards the older people. Now, I did get a couple of private questions here, so I'm going to address that. As a realtor having sales from prior periods and receiving payments after March, do you qualify for CRB since the commission was earned previously to March 15th? Now, the problem with that question is that it's going to depend on how CRA is going to look at it. Technically, consideration for the commission is actually when the keys are delivered, not when you actually sold it. So, the final piece of somebody receiving payment for their service is the delivery. So if I, have the income taxes prepared and I don't give it to my client, I technically cannot backdate an invoice to, January or February, because I delivered that tax return in March. So CRA, I think, can take that point of view because the property is not switched over into the new person until that process is complete, where the property is converted and then the commission is earned. So I think that's going to be a problem to address the whole whether or not I qualify for the CRB. And to be quite honest, like one commission payment that they might receive might put them over that $1,000. So I do think that that's probably going to be a concern, and I don't think that they would qualify, but they can ask their the CRB line and see whether or not that qualifies. Second private message, again, if I applied for the CRB last period but would like to apply for the 75% subsidy, now how would I go about that? It's possible. You don't have to qualify. You don't have to reapply for this the CRB benefit for the next period. If you actually look at the CRB and the payroll period of remittances, they're pretty much on tune with the same periods. So the only thing is, for the person that's asking this question, again, they have not rolled out the CRB, the 75% wage subsidy yet. So if you pay yourself 75% of your salary from your company from the previous period, which is maybe February at this point, you will get that 75% reimbursed back from the government, up to that $847 a week. So it's going to be available, and I think that addressing the second period, now you can technically not go, you can't go back for the first period because you actually took the CRB and you never paid yourself payroll. They're going to be strict, I believe, on these payroll payments, because I had a client that all of a sudden asked me, what if I paid myself a salary for 2019 and paid the penalties off? What do you think? And I said, well, so first of all, I don't think that's going to work, because the government's going to turn around and say, where is your remittances? Why didn't you make them on a regular basis? How do we know that you made this income? These are things that I think are going to be a problem for those people that are trying to circumvent the benefits that are offered to us. And all of a sudden, if you never had the salary and you're going to have that salary, not just for the 75% subsidy, but for that $40,000 loan, which is also very lucrative, well, I think there's going to be a problem, because the government is likely going to hire a significant number of CRA agents after this whole process is done. So if you're unemployed, you probably have an ability to get a job with the CRA when this is all said and done, for them to go back and maybe look back on all these people that may have taken advantage of the situation.
Now, there was one more question from Rafi. It's between 4 months of CRB, we will get 8,000, but with wage subsidy, you get 3 months, you'll get about 10,000. is it easier and less of work and headache to apply CARB compared to wages subsidy?
Okay, so let's take a look at the 847 times, let's say 12 periods. That's 10,164. The calculation is not quite correct because the CERB benefits actually are going a longer period. Right now, they're set up for 16 weeks. Now, technically, in the first little while, you can apply for the 75% subsidy because the government is actually giving you 7 periods to apply for this benefit of the CERB, as long as obviously the situation is where it is. But if you are comparing apples and apples, the CERB benefits are going to be 6,000 in the period, and the wage subsidy would be 10,000 in the period. So that's a difference of 4,000, not 2,000. And on top of that, the CRA is also paying the CPP and the EI on the employer side as well. So, and then when you take into consideration that the government is also paying your taxes, well, on the $6,000 that you earn, depending on your tax bracket, you might pay 30% tax. So that $6,000 is essentially going to be $4,200. So now the government's paid you $10,000 for the subsidy for the 3 months, plus the CPP and EI on the employer side, and which is going to be at least $1,000, let's say. And when you're done with your taxes at the bare minimum at 30%, you'll only receive $4,200 from the CERB benefits because those will be taxable. So the difference now becomes around 6,000, 7,000. So I think that addresses that question, that the 75% wage subsidy, if you're earning that minimum, 58,700 income, is much better for you if you're your own business and you're paying yourself that salary.
All right, that was the last question I got, Grant. Did you get any more private ones?
CRB is for 16 weeks. I understand it's for 16 weeks, but you could be on the 75% wage subsidy for the 12 weeks and then take yourself off and receive another $2,000 from the CRB after the fact, assuming that the government doesn't extend the 75% wage subsidy for a longer period than, let's say, the 12 weeks. So if they extend it longer than the 12 weeks, which they might because the situation may not have gotten better, but if they haven't, you can just turn around and say, I've done the 12 weeks, now I'm going to receive 2. So I received 10,000. I didn't pay any taxes on that because the government covered all of the taxes on that 75% wage subsidy. And then I paid nearly 30% tax on 6,000 that left me with 4,200. Now I get an extra $2,000 afterwards. So it's definitely a lot better for your 75% wage subsidy if you are already on a salary system. So I think that addresses that. Another private question here: can a realtor collect the $2,000 until such time as they get their commission? Well, if they're not getting a commission for the specific month, let's say they have no income coming up for, they never had any income. Remember, I discussed this in the beginning. Not sure if the individual that's asking the question was already here, but there is that sort of loophole period where for the 14 days from March, I think it was March 28th to the April 11th period, 29th or the 28th, where you would, if you had no income in that period, you would have qualified for the CERB benefits. But if, let's say, excuse me, you had income in a certain month, but you have an income coming to you in the following month, well, as a realtor, it's going to be very easy for you to determine when you're getting paid for these. So if you're getting paid when the following month closing happens, and for this month you have no income, you can qualify for this month and apply for this month and receive the $2,000 benefit. if anything, a realtor is going to know where their income is going to be this year better than any other self-employed individual. Let's say a painter or a consultant maybe that might not be doing any work as a result of this current period, because they don't know how much, whether or not they're going to earn an income for the next month. But a realtor, it probably has their closing set ahead of time, and they'll know. So if you know for a fact that you are not getting any income for that period, you will definitely qualify, and you should definitely consider applying for it for that month, and maybe not for the next month. The government will take that into consideration if you did not have an income. They're not saying if you made, $20,000 next month because you had a very good sale for that period, that should disqualify you. They're just saying if you didn't earn any income for the period. And realistically, it does say that you technically cannot work, but then they came out and said, well, if you do work but make less than $1,000 gross, we're really going to qualify you for that. And for all those businesses out there, they did say gross before taxes, but they didn't say before, after expenses. So my assumption for businesses, if you are, invoicing more than $1,000, but after your deductions, you do get down to the $1,000, that would pretty much qualify you for the 1,000. So if I invoice somebody for 2,000, but then after my expenses of rent and this and that and what have you, I'm under $1,000 for that month, then I should qualify for the 2,000. So I'm looking over here. There is no other questions that I see right now, but again, I will have maybe Salpi send out an email after this fact, and if you do have any specific questions that you want to address, and they're more private, and you don't want to have it, come out here, I tried to be as considerate as possible with the questions in case there were, concerns. If you do have those questions, I'm going to see if they want to put my email address so that I can address as many questions as possible. And like I said, if you do find my fan page on Facebook, I'm trying to update as much as I can. If there are any changes, like today's change, for instance, about the 20,000 payroll requirement for the loan, the 40,000 loan, the CEBA loan, the emergency business account loan. So there are changes that are going to be coming, I'm sure. I do believe that the government's done everything they can to address as much as they can. And I think that the level of consideration for both individual and business parties has been really great. I'm not going to comment about the stay at home, but the premier and the opposition have their own vacation in the cottages or outside or what have you. But I think from an operational point of view, from what they've given us as benefit measures, and I know they're not addressing everybody, and I know there are people out there that are probably hurting, and they should qualify for some of these benefits. And like I said, I urge you to contact your MPs if you are one of these individuals, MPs or MPPs, and give them their real life situations. And most of these people have hearts. They're going to listen, and they're going to try to help you as much as they can. So just do whatever you can from that end. And let's try to be civil to each other. Like I said, you're a landlord and you have a tenant that can't pay. Try to help them out in the period, because I do think that this is a scenario that's unforeseen magnitude as to what's happening around the world. But we do want to stay human at the end of the day and consider our neighbors, consider our friends. And I know that everybody's probably going to have to throw their own parties when it's all said and done. And maybe we're all going to self-isolate with these parties because everybody's going to throw it. Mm-hmm. But let's try to be positive and look at what we can do to help each other out.
All right, thank you very much, Grant, for that. That was a lovely lecture. I'm sure I personally found out a lot of information that I wasn't very familiar with. Actually, a very important question because you mentioned it twice. You mentioned that you have a Facebook page and you're on social media, but you never mentioned the name of the page.
The name of the page is Grant Matosian, CPA, CGA, CFP, I believe. So if you look for it, if you just search it, it'll come up. The fan page is, I urge everybody to at least, if they're not listening to what's happening around, just join the page, because I'm trying to post as much as I can. Just recently, unfortunately, as much as we have, good people around the world, there are people that would take advantage of the situation. A new a scam that was just released, a client of mine sent it to me, and I posted it right away. Something about, your income tax return is ready, your refund is ready, $520 is available, just log in here. Automatic scam. The government does not do a transfer by you logging into your bank account. They do a direct deposit as long as you have your banking information, but don't be fooled by these logging into your bank account to try to get these. And it was it was created very carefully and had the, Canada Revenue Agency logo, it had somebody's name at the bottom. It's very unfortunate that people will take advantage of this situation and would go after certain people that may not know better. But I honestly, I had about 10 people that day, and I'm sure hundreds more that maybe saw my post or received it and they didn't even think about it. But the fact that people were asking me that question leads me to believe that some people believe that these types of things exist. So you have to be really careful as to what's going on. If you're not sure about the refund or the this or the that that's coming up, make sure you ask your accountant and make sure that you don't click that button or address that issue until you've had a conversation with somebody that knows what's going on. The CRB is one thing when you're going through the CRA website. The EI is one point when you're going through the Service Canada website. These other emails that come up with your CRA refund are definitely something of a conversation to have with your accountant.
All right, wonderful. We've had a lot of great messages thanking you, Grant. So thank you very much for coming along.
No problem. My pleasure.
Go ahead. You wanted to say something?
What I was going to suggest was if we do have some major changes coming up, maybe have a secondary session if there are some major changes that do come up in the next month or so. I would be open to having a similar webinar available for everybody, because as we know, every day something's changing. If they're small enough, we're not going to have there's no need for it. The topics, you would be getting them on your feeds every day. But if there's some major changes, and I think that we need to address that with the community, I think that we should do our job and have another session as a second round.
Exactly. So we will definitely be keeping in touch with you within the next, well, I want to say week, but every day, like you said, everything changes in the 11th hour. So we will definitely be in touch with you, Grant.
Sounds good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming along today. I'm sure this was as informative for you all as it was for us. We will be sending you an email tomorrow just as a follow-up for this event to get your feedback. And also, like Grant mentioned, we will include his Facebook page and the link to his email address as well. So if anybody wanted to reach out to him privately, they can do so without any problems. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Same to you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.